Welcome to another exciting episode of Well To Do. I'm Andi Lew, your host, and it's all about the things that you need to do to stay well. And I'm really excited about this episode because it's all about mindset. And before we get into it, I really need to thank our sponsor, Aries Tech. Aries Tech is a fantastic wellness brand. You can get little stickers that go on the back of your phone, your iPad, your laptop, or something for your home. But basically, it helps you with EMFs, electromagnetic fields. It helps minimize the radiation through modulation rather than blocking. When you have an EMF blocker, it ends up just working harder. But with this modulation, it's really next level wellness. So check out Aries Tech. And now let's introduce Andrew Anabi from Poolhouse New York. Andrew, you are such a businessman. I think you've got this beautiful, warm energy. You used to be a lawyer and you decided to change up your whole life and business. You left law to start this beautiful apparel, which is relaxed. It's got a great name, Poolhouse New York. Sounds so fun. We're going to get into that a little bit more. But what I loved about this brand and when I met you at the gym at Equinox is that it's all about really just helping people feel connected. And that's what I'm all about. So the moment we got chatting, that's exactly who you were, and it's a reflection of your brand. So tell me all about your philosophy on Poolhouse New York.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's kind of been just a natural process, like sharing like what I've learned and the mindset, kind of building up this brand, like behind the scenes, telling people how it really is. And through that experience from transitioning to law to starting a company that you had no experience in before, there's so many lessons that people relate to. And that's been the whole process the past couple of years by building it up.
It's so interesting, actually. I think that there's a lot of career changes going on lately and people finally deciding what they really want to do with their lives.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that this is now your calling, and how did you get the courage to leave law? Because you studied so hard
Yeah.
to now start up a clothing brand.
Yeah, that was probably that was one of the hardest decisions I ever made because I worked so hard to go to a certain law school. I wanted to go to the best law school that I could go work at these law firms that the older kids in my law school were going to. I went to Columbia Law School, worked at this big law firm in Manhattan. It was something that I always dreamed of doing. And then I got into it and I was like, is this really what I want to be spending my life doing?
Yeah, wow.
Everyone in my firm, great people. So thankful for the opportunity. But
Of course.
I didn't feel like the world, I didn't feel like if nobody did the work that I was doing, I didn't think that the world would be different. I think it would have operated the same. That was my personal feelings about it. Some people might
So you
have a
wanted to
different
create
take.
you wanted to create something that was going to impact the world.
Something that was meaningful to me and to other people.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of us want that. And it's a journey to figure out how do you do that. And I think it's a daunting question. You have to give yourself room to throw things at the dart. Don't make any rash decisions too soon. Because there's so much like I needed to learn, right? Like I was a lawyer. I didn't know how to use Photoshop. I didn't know how to be a creative.
Yeah.
And so I needed to give myself time to figure those things out.
And now you've been doing this for 3 years. It actually reminds me of somebody that I coached who, as a wellness coach, he saw that I was coming backwards and forwards to, America with my books.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I want to do what you do. And we were in Australia and he was a draftsman. And he was like, can we do a coaching session? And within I think it was one, maybe 2 sessions, I just remember his whole career changed because his mindset changed.
Mm-hmm.
And he realized that he could become a videographer.
Yeah.
So now he's actually a videographer here. He's so super successful.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about having the courage to pursue that calling. And he really feels like he's making a difference too with some of the purpose projects that he's taking on.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think it is that makes you realize, hang on a second, this isn't my passion, this isn't my calling, I need to change? Like, is it...
Oh, that's funny that you bring that up. There was actually a very defining moment because I remember I got into meditation as a lawyer. I was just feeling so lost in my life, so purposeless. And I'd heard about meditation for the longest time, but I felt like, oh, I don't need that. I don't want to be soft. I want to, be like on edge. I was working in Manhattan. near Wall Street. So you kind of have to be really sharp. But then I
Yeah.
was listening to this podcast, funny enough,
Yeah.
of this investment banker, and he was talking about how he felt the same way, that he just didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. He just, I don't know, felt confused. And I related a lot to that. And he was a person who was in a profession similar to mine. I connected with that. So I decided, might as well, I'm going to give it a shot. And I forget who was the original person that got me into it. I think I was listening to the Tim Ferriss podcast, and he recommended somebody. I did their meditation on YouTube, and it really gave me a lot of solace, a lot of perspective, allowed me to realize like I don't have to identify with my thoughts. That was the biggest thing that I got from meditation. And then after I got past that, it allowed me to have a clearer vision for where I wanted to see my life going. And I kept asking myself one question that someone told me that they always ask themselves whenever they have a tough decision to make. And it's, hypothetically, if you have children, let's say you don't, what would you want your child to do in this situation? Because 9 times out of 10, you want to give them the best advice. You want them to be happy, but you also want them to be safe. It's a really good perspective. I think, at least I found it helpful. And in the beginning, I would always say, like, I would want my child to have a clear plan before they left law, right?
Mm.
And then over the next couple of months, and then by the end of the year, after I was asking myself that question, I realized actually more than that, I wouldn't want them to stay somewhere just because they thought that they were going to fail, just because they were worried about that. I think that's the worst thing to do. So that was the
Failure and
yeah,
flipping that,
yeah,
what is a failure? I mean, as somebody who's grown up auditioning my whole life, every time you don't get the job, it's not necessarily a failure. You're finding something else that's more right for you. Same with when we date. We didn't fail if that didn't work out. Rather have gratitude for when we had the courage enough to enter that connection with that other human being. What did we teach each other in that moment of time? Or just any kind of failure. Flipping perception is so key because we really are on this crazy journey called life. And it's like a choose your own adventure book. Like, do I turn this page and make it this path? And any choice you make is going to propel you in the right direction because you're going to make mistakes based on the lessons you're willing to learn. And I always say, wherever we land up is where we're meant to be. We're meant to be there. Why? Why do we know that? Because it happened.
there's a lot of solace in that, like accepting that things are meant to be. It's been one of the biggest. You were asking me earlier, what's like one of the biggest lessons you've learned, and that's a hard question. There's a lot of pressure, but I think one thing that I keep coming back to, it's always stayed the test of time, is that I'm so thankful that I didn't get what I thought I wanted.
Okay.
It's like that mistake, like it needed to happen because it opened up doors that you just didn't see.
Yep.
And I remember when I was a lawyer, I didn't necessarily like the practice group that I was in. That was a big problem. I wanted to originally work in venture capital, the tech scene. I thought this was very, exciting and sexy. I remember getting to the final stages of the interview. I got a call back at the top law firm in New York City who does this kind of law. Met all the partners. I thought it went great. I was so happy. I was like, I'm going to be working here. Like, this is my future. And I didn't get the job.
Oh, wow.
And I was so disappointed. And that was the moment where I realized I'm not going to be a lawyer.
Wow.
Like, I
Really?
knew that. Then I had to figure
Not
out.
like I'm not going to work at that place, just I'm not going to be a lawyer.
Like, I'm going to, like, I have to figure out something else. That was the moment where I was like, okay,
Wow.
Andrew, you got to figure something out. And so I ended up taking another job at a different law firm. But I knew from the first day that I got to find a way out of Alcatraz, as glim as that sounds.
So here you are, you found a way. How did you find yourself into clothing? Like you said, you knew nothing about social media and all of these things that you knew the new brand needed. Did you hire people or why fashion?
I didn't hire people for the longest time. That was the biggest mistake that I've ever made. I thought I could do everything on my own, and you cannot. One quote that I love is that if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And this year,
Oh, I love that. Gratitude for everybody in this studio right now.
But it really is. We're social creatures, and we're meant to like work and live together. And you talked about business before, and the definition of a business is something that cannot happen by a single person, like an organization Like this thing can only happen through people coming together.
Right.
That's
That's
the
what
purest.
Poolhouse New York's about.
Yeah, bringing people together, creating something that I didn't have, that I wish I had.
But hang on a second. The culture online and how you're selling and perceiving the brand is also the philosophy behind the brand.
Yeah, it's very meta in that way. And yeah, it is.
Whoa. So then tell me, how do you have a story that you can share about how you change somebody's life, really, from the brand? Like, because you have all these beautiful quotes that we can follow and philosophies.
Mhm.
Tell me about one of either your favorite philosophies or a story of when somebody applied that philosophy and it really changed their life.
Yeah, the thing about the online world, I must be honest, um, it's hard to like really see the impact that you're having online. People message me all the time. They're like, "I love your writings. I love your podcast, Andrew." But when it really hits home is when you meet people in the real world. It's like
Mhm.
the people that I brought into my team.
Mhm.
One of my employees, like he used to work at a medical office, and we share stories about like working in the corporate world and how we just didn't like it, and how the environment that we're creating now is just so much better. And being able to have that impact with that person, being able to create a good working environment for them, allow them a space to be creative, something that I wish I had. That is the most uh, that's when I kind of like look back. I'm like, wow, we're doing something that's really cool.
It's interesting that you bring up creative.
Yeah,
We are born to create.
yeah.
We are creators, creators.
Mhm.
Whether it's procreation or creation, we are meant to create. And I think only now, since the pandemic, we are finally starting to realize that's what we're born to do. So if I could just get you to inspire others to create something,
Mhm.
that's going to ignite the spark in all of us, right? That's what makes us feel alive. Because then we share that with the world as well.
Yeah, and I think it really is the most it's the most fulfilling thing, but it's also the hardest thing to do as a living. And like being able
Really?
to turn it into a business, like business is hard,
Oh,
and most
turning
creatives,
creative into business is hard.
yeah, and most
Yeah.
because most creatives, they don't want to do the business side, right? And
But hang on,
one of the
think about everything that's created. Somebody created the traffic light. Somebody created
yeah, you can make anything creative. I
Yes.
agree. Yes,
Yes.
it's like the mindset that you bring into it. I agree. And so it's about having fun with the business side, being creative with it, and that's what's allowed me to like, be so successful with it and keep doing it every day, is because I'm making it creative. And I think so often, and one of the like the reasons behind the name is like this yin and yang concept. Poolhouse New York. I grew up in LA, spent a lot of like my 20s out in New York, and it's this juxtaposition between the good and the bad days of your life. You can't have the rainbows without the rain. You wouldn't appreciate the sun without the rain or the clouds.
Mm.
And so it's finding that kind of solace and like peacefulness with that when things aren't going your way, to realize that maybe there's a lesson here. Maybe you need this to appreciate something that you were ignoring before.
So the models you're choosing as well, do they have certain stories behind why they want to work for Pool House when they're showing the apparel?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. That's I mean, some of it's people that I know, some of it's people that casting, and it's always ones who feel like aligned with it. I think those are the ones that are gonna like worked the best. I ran the first photo shoot last Friday actually, and it was amazing because those people, they were engaged with it, and you could tell that they really were aligned with the things that we were doing. I think across the board, people that you bring into your team, it's so important about them believing in the mission that you have.
Mm.
Because if you don't, then I don't know how far.
You can't teach passion with the people that you hire, right? You can teach all the other skills like you learn, as you say, social media and everything, but passion is something that just needs to be already there.
Yeah.
And as you say, you become aligned. So
And
it's
like cover letters, just like on top of that, I never
right.
thought that they were important. Now, as a business owner, oh my goodness.
Why?
Because it shows the passion.
Right.
And as a kid, I never understood that. Like I always would put that off. And yeah, now it's just
how much effort they're putting into really wanting to be with you.
Yeah.
Got it.
So if you're a kid out there, write a good cover letter. I'm telling you, it'll take you so much farther than a great GPA will.
Amazing.
Mhm.
And when you are writing one, always get into that heartfelt space of gratitude and then explaining your why, why you feel connected to that brand or person that you want to work for. And then the rest just flows, really. But it's interesting that we're having this conversation about mindset, because what I'm learning is that you're saying change your mindset about having the courage to change careers, to really do what makes you happy, then bring people with you along the way, choose those people that are really in alignment with you. And and just, I guess, make sure that you've got the courage to create in anything that you do. As you say, make everything creative. So no matter what your business is, you still have an opportunity to search for how to be creative in your world.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really important, because you said do what makes you happy, and that was a problem that I always had, right? Because like you have to figure out a way to intertwine your talents with what you have. I don't know if you've heard of the concept Ikigai. It's like the Japanese concept of finding your meaning in life, and it's you really find
Ikigai.
Ikigia. And the theory is you find your meaning by figuring out what you're good at, what people, what value you can provide people, what do people want that you can provide, and then what are people willing to pay for?
Wow.
Like that's how you create like the best like work for yourself.
Service for the world.
Yeah, and for yourself too. Is what are you passionate about? Because if you're just doing law just to make money and to make other people impressed, then you're not going to find happiness. Trust me.
I do trust you, and I have so much wonder about that, because I lived in Japan for a year when I was 19. I have some Japanese friends. I've got Japanese listeners of this show as well. Ikigai. I didn't know. I speak a little bit of Japanese. I didn't know about this phrase. There's so many beautiful phrases that they have, but what an amazing philosophy, because Japanese people actually stick to the same job for the majority of their lives. And maybe it's because they've actually found out what their calling is right from the get-go, and they know how to do that.
Children know it. Like I was super into photography and clothes as a kid. I loved that.
Right. So you're saying you're just going back to what you always should have been doing.
Yeah, that I never had the confidence to do in the beginning. I remember before I went to undergrad, I was thinking about going to film school. I always like wanted to do something creative, but I was like, nah, that's for other people, Andrew. That's not for you. You can't do that. But then I realized, Andrew, if you can do this, if you can go to Columbia Law School, you're so much more likely to fail at something that you're just not passionate about. That's something that you are. That was my philosophy.
Wow, yeah, you're going to fail anyway, so you may as well be doing something that you love.
Yeah, and you can fail at what you don't want. Like you might not get that job that you really, the job that you don't really want. Like you're going to get rejected from that too. So I don't know. I heard that quote from, was the Jim Carrey. He was doing a commencement speech.
Okay.
And he was talking about a story of his dad. He used to be an accountant, and one day his dad came home and he said he lost his job. And it was at that moment Jim Carrey realized, wow, you can also fail at what you don't want to do, because his dad always wanted to be a comedian too, but he thought accounting is safe. It'll always give me a paycheck. And
now Jim Carrey's the most amazing comedian ever.
Yeah. See how it's funny how life works out.
I just really love this whole Japanese philosophy, really, because the way in which I like to parent is to nurture the child into seeing what it is they're already passionate about. Because when we're little, we already know I want to be the fire engine, the fire truck, Yeah. I want to be the hairdresser. I want to be Astro Boy. I want to be, the kids we all know what we want to do, and we're born into our calling. Somewhere along the line in our modern world, we get told stories, a narrative about, you're not going to make it, this isn't for you, get a real job, all these different things. And I wonder if it's a Western world way of living, and there's more peace in, honoring and raising humans with the potential to do what it is their hearts desire, because we do buy passion. We don't buy businesses. We buy passion. We buy from people who are passionate. And it's almost like our hearts want to support those people that are passionate about it.
I just think there's like a fine thing. It's like, how do you do that successfully, right? Because at the end of the day, you have to support yourself, right? You don't want to be starving at the end of the day. And that's why I said figuring out what you are good at, right? So a lot of people, like I went to law school, I'm good at writing, reading, all this stuff.
So that taught you that.
So it's like, okay, how do I tie this into clothing, right? Okay, maybe let's tell a story about the clothing, about the experience of growing this. I don't have experience in
Got it.
Making garments yet. I don't have experience in photography, but I'm learning these things, and maybe I'm not the best, but let me throw in something that I'm good at.
Got it. That's your unique selling point.
Yeah.
So what I'm gathering here is, and this is what I love doing for businesses, brands, and products, is finding out the story behind the brand, communicating that USP, that unique selling point. Because if we pour our hearts into it, as you're saying, and we put out all our unique skills into this business or company, it will become so unique because no one else can emulate that model because nobody else is you.
Yeah.
And we use that same philosophy in relationships too. Don't try and be beautiful like them, be beautiful like you. So here you are going, I recognize I'm a really great writer, but I don't want to be in law anymore writing that way. I want to do something creative, but how can I pull that unique skill into this business model? So here you are merging, I guess, in a juxtaposition type of a way, because who would have thought to make Poolhouse New York a clothing brand all about philosophy and writing? Do you know what I mean?
It's a beautiful part about life.
Yeah.
Things unfold in ways that you can't even imagine sometimes. It's like the magic of life, I think.
Yeah, that's true. I remember a friend of mine, he lives in San Diego, Mike Sherbakov. He was actually number 2 or 1 on the episodes of Well To Do. Anyway, great. But, he used to say to me, I love the excitement of not knowing what's going to happen next.
No, I love it too. It ends up being so much better than you ever anticipated. That's why.
But I mean, it takes a lot to have faith and surrender to that notion and trust that, this is the path that we're meant to be by not knowing. Whereas, as somebody who was a high achiever and still is a high achiever, I used to need to know what's happening next, where are we going and everything. So when you're on path, though, you don't need to know. It's taken care of by the divine.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said that you were you always needed to know. For Poolhouse, for the longest time, I was the opposite way, because with like law or just my life leading up to that, I realized that my life always ended up looking so different a year forward than I ever anticipated. So I thought, with this, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna let it flow, and that's good. But I think and that's why there's always like this yin and yang balance. It's like going back and forth between letting go and holding on. So I think it's important to let go of what you think. This is a great quote, actually, that I heard the other day.
Okay.
Someone I heard on a podcast.
This is Mr. Quote, you guys.
Yeah, they said.
You're the best at quotes.
I don't want to butcher it, but they said, I have strongly held opinions, I have very passionate opinions that are weakly held. I'm like, that is exactly how I've been living this past year. And it's been the most profound thing. It's like being really passionate and fiery about what you believe in. But then when you realize, oh, you might have been wrong, there might have been something better, leaning into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think
being okay with perhaps I'm wrong.
Yeah, because so often we're one or the other. We're really passionate and we're never going to change our opinions, or we're lackadaisical and we're just going with the wind, going anywhere people tell us to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe be both.
Yeah, and it's that beautiful dance between, that ebb and flow, and even like in relationships, desire comes from that pull of cat and mouse and all of those things. The tide comes in to lap up the shore with the water, and then it goes back out, but it always comes back in again.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, and I like to draw analogies about what else is like that. I mean, I wrote a health book called Connected, right? So we are so connected to each other. We're connected to the earth. We're all the same, and what gives life is usually an equal and opposite energy of everything, of both. And so if we apply that philosophy to, letting go, having a little bit of control, letting go again, and I guess controlling what you can and then surrendering to what you can't, I guess, will help a lot of people with their mindset. So what's the biggest thing that you could suggest that we can all do to feel more well in terms of mindset?
Probably what I said. Probably what I said. There's 2 things that are coming to mind. I'll start with like one thing that I said previously, where you're gonna realize later that you're gonna be so grateful for what you thought. Like, just being so grateful you didn't get what you thought you wanted, and you're gonna realize that you grew so much through those failures. Like, had they not happened, you wouldn't have met X, Y, and Z. You wouldn't have learned this skill, and you wouldn't be where you are now. And it's so much better than the universe had a plan for you that was better than what you originally planned. And whenever I remember that, when things go wrong, it always calms me. It makes me try to learn the lesson, because you can easily I know we talked about fate and meant to be earlier, and I don't think it's one or the other. I think there's a certain tide that you're meant to go down, but you can also miss that tide if you're not willing
Yeah.
to find the lesson.
Yep.
And maybe the universe will keep driving that lesson out to you until you learn it. That's the first thing, and then the second thing is we talked a lot about like, finding something that you love, something that you're passionate about, and it's a hard thing to ask because a lot of us, we get clouded by the accolades, by the gifts, by the money, by the fancy things, and pulling back and asking yourself, what like um what would you do if you knew you'd fail? Like, not succeed. I don't think that's the good question because you're going to fail the whole step of the way. Like, what are you going to do irregardless of the result? Because that, I think, is what you're passionate about. That's where your real calling lies. It's something that you enjoy the process of.
Well, I can back myself fully in that. I mean, I moved from Australia to LA, and I was like, I said to my son, what if it doesn't work out? And he goes, then we've had the greatest adventure of a lifetime.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it? And it just reminds me that, life is this great big journey, this crazy adventure, and whatever lessons we learn from it. But it is working out. And even when it's not working out, it's working out.
You just can't see it yet. Your life is like a book, and the meaning only becomes clear the more chapters you read. That's something.
Ooh, there's another quote, you guys. So when we go onto Poolhouse New York Instagram page, there's just a bunch of quotes there. How many quotes and philosophy memes do you release?
Actually, no quotes, actually. I don't do quotes that often. It's just
really. There's a lot of photos of your beautiful clothing, but like I noticed that
compared to writing that I have. Like,
the writing.
A lot of people think it's quotes. It's just me just saying what's going on right now.
Yeah,
all the
but
time.
It's your quote, Andrew.
Is it a quote? If something that you say, is that a quote?
Well, if I have to repeat what I read, I'm going to quote Andrew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But like, because you're a great writer, is there a lot of pressure to deliver all this beautiful, stuff to read, or is it just something that's always been innate and it comes quite quickly to you when you're preparing that content?
It doesn't. It is one of the things that I enjoy doing, like, more than anything, is writing. I think there's a lot of clarity that comes from it. It's one thing to have a conversation with someone or to even like journal something,
right?
But it's one thing to write something down with the intention that you're going to share it, because then you're really going to think about it. Like, does this make sense?
Ooh, did this come from law too?
I mean, probably. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think being analytical about my writing, like, does it make sense, definitely came from law. It's like, okay, we're talking about like food and mental health, and then we're talking about like finances. Like, where's the connection, Andrew? It has to be some kind of like, pivot into that. A lot of times, I think that can do us a lot of good, like thinking, like, is there a connection between what I'm thinking? Like, does it make sense to think this?
So if somebody else were to read this, what would they be thinking? And you're thinking about what they're thinking as you're writing.
No, not necessarily. I'm just thinking, like, does this make sense for me?
All right.
And hopefully that'll make sense for other people. I think you have to, it's like this weird juxtaposition when you make creative things. You have to think about other people, the audience. We're social creatures, and I think it's important. You don't think about other people, you're a sociopath, I would say. But you also have to, talk about something that's real, and that's a very solace place. It's a very personal place.
What's the most real thing you've written about?
Real thing? A lot of things. I mean, it kind of runs the gamut. I don't think there's been something that, I don't know if there's been a topic that I haven't talked about. Yeah.
Interesting. So you go everywhere. You just go wherever you need to go.
Yeah, it probably should be a little bit more fine-tuned.
Okay.
Something that I've been thinking about lately, the past couple of months, figuring out what are the things that the brand wants to talk about. Like, in the beginning, it was kind of about anything.
So what does the brand want to talk about? What's Poolhouse New York interested in? I
think we're leaning a lot into the creative world. Like you said, it's a lot of people that I've been connecting with. It's people who are doing things like this or want to do things like this, and also do like people who are doing like corporate jobs or anything. You don't have to be creative. I don't want to pigeonhole into that.
But sharing your story.
Yeah, and the things that we're learning, because we made a lot of mistakes, and my hope is that we don't have to make as many mistakes in the future. And that's one of the things that I keep coming back to. I remember reading this book by this author, John Green, one of my favorite writers, and he had this prose book that he released, and he was talking about this rubber band in the middle of the country. It's
Mm.
this giant rubber band, the biggest rubber band ball in the entire world.
Oh, a rubber band ball.
Yeah, ball. And or no, it's a paintball. Actually, this is what happens. So people just go there and they paint on it. It's a giant ball made of paint.
Okay.
It keeps getting bigger over time.
Each time they paint, it gets bigger. It grows.
I think it's that, or it's a rubber band. Anyways, that's
But
not the most important part.
It's growing.
It's growing by every person who keeps coming and adding to the ball, whether it's a rubber band or a piece of paint.
I love it.
And he said, like, your life is like kind of like that too. It's in 100 years, maybe, or 1,000 years, people aren't going to remember you.
Wow.
But like the little thing that you did influenced X, Y, and Z, and then they influence the next person, and has this trickling effect. And you're within that rubber band ball or that paint ball somewhere there, and
you're in it.
You're in it, and making a good impact on that ball, or the future, being able to.
You're shaping.
Yeah,
what other people bring to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
I love that analogy. It's kind of like the movie Pay It Forward.
Pay It Forward.
Yeah, have you seen that?
No.
What's that kid from Home Alone? Hey, Joel Osmond, or whatever his name was. Oh,
I was so
cool.
little when that came out. I loved it.
I know, it shows my age, but basically he came up with a beautiful philosophy of, creating an act of good or kindness or whatever, and then instead of paying it back, that person had to pay it forward to 3 people, and then those 3 people had to pay it forward to others.
I love that.
It just kept spreading. And I guess it's the ripple effect with the ball, and the ripple effect. And you never know how far-reaching and how we're all contributing. And mindset is just such a big topic right now. As you can see, we could absolutely talk about it forever. And you talk about it all day, every day, which is what connects people to Poolhouse New York. Tell us a little bit about, the clothing you're wearing today. It's beautiful blue. Do you normally choose colors, like high vibrational colors, or what's your theory behind? Obviously, it needs to be relaxed, but what else?
Not necessarily relaxed. There's like this juxtaposition, like everything that we do. Maybe I've hit it over the head too much right now, but the clothing that we make tries to walk this line of like in between spaces, something that you can wear at home, but also going out. That's why we started with this t-shirt, because I felt like there wasn't a t-shirt that I could wear at home, but I was also comfortable going to a podcast or out with dinner with friends. And I think it's important for us to be able to get more use out of our clothing. We don't need to have, I don't know.
You don't have to have this clothing for the going out, this one for the gym, this one.
Sense.
Yeah. You just want
to. Kind of a pain, to be honest.
Go home, get changed. I came with a bag of things today, but that's because I had costume changes. But yeah,
but it's important though, like that your costume changes. Even me thinking about what I was going to wear today, because it influences your mindset. Like if you're wearing something that you're comfortable in, it's going to change how you feel. And so, like creating clothing, anything that helps you be a little bit more like yourself, feel like that.
Well, we express ourselves through what we wear, don't we? I mean, think about tribes and, painting our faces, and warriors dressing up before they go to war or to dance or to whatever it is. We express ourselves through how we dress ourselves. Oh my gosh, I need IP on that.
That's good.
You like that?
I like that.
We express ourselves how we dress ourselves. Well, there you go. Well, I'm a writer. I might suggest that you write a book at some point.
Definitely, that's one of my 5-year. So I talked about how I don't like plans, but that is one of my 5-year plans, is to eventually put together a book.
Amazing. So tell me, what is your future for Poolhouse New York? You're a new company, 3 years young. What do you see in like another 10 years?
To keep doing, like, as corny as it sounds, to keep doing this, but just having more of an impact with more people. Not for the sake of doing that, but in order to make like more people's lives better. And at the end of the day, to keep doing this, I just really enjoy the whole process of it. And so
do you connect with people online, and do they give you feedback? How do you know how far reaching it is?
So I mean, we do. People reach out to me a lot online, but we have a studio in LA. We've been hosting a lot of events there, meeting a lot of people, connecting through that, bringing more of the online stuff into the real world, because one of the best things through social media is the people that I've met, right? But I'm the only one who gets the benefit of that, because, we have an audience, we have a following, people, they want to reach out to me. And I find people who have similar interests to me. But when I was a lawyer, it was so hard to find people who like similar music, had similar interest, because not enough people are putting themselves out on the internet, and that's one of the blessings of it. So if we're able to help connect people in the real world like that by hosting more events, that's how I see we can make more of an impact. That's one of the goals for next year.
Well, the best way to meet someone is obviously
Real world.
in real life,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the way I met you, you were reading a book that I also read, and I'm the kind of person that talks to everyone.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's just me or because I'm in a new place, a new city now, and, I'm happy to make new friends everywhere. But I think it's kind of just me anyway. I like talking to everyone.
Yeah.
I found it really hard during lockdown, like not being able to talk to real people. I think that's a huge part of our social health fabric. When we don't have that, we are very unwell, which will never make sense to me. But anyway, the point is that having the events is so good. So if we want to come along to one of your events, can anyone just turn up?
Yeah, anyone can. We have a studio in downtown LA right now. Hopefully we have more locations soon. That's definitely one of the goals. But yeah, anyone
LA
is welcome.
based.
Yeah, LA based right now. Hopefully we have some spaces in New York. A lot of people ask me like, "Oh, do you miss New York, Andrew?" And I have to say those were the best years of my life, New York. But so glad to be back in LA because New York is a hard life. It's great, but I don't know if it's like meant to be lived there for the rest of your life. But it was a great experience. It's with me for the rest of my life, I think. And I think if you can live in New York, do it. Because had I grown up in California, or had I lived in California my whole life, which was my original goal, this is why you should never realize that your goals, things are going to change. But had I lived in California my whole life, if I never moved to New York, I would feel like I would have been soft. I wouldn't have a good backbone. I wouldn't have appreciated certain things in my life. And
New York was tough.
It was tough, but also fun, exhilarating. It taught me a lot of things. Met so many people. It was so enriching. But it's just a hard place to raise a family, and that's one of my goals. In
nice.
The next 10 years, to eventually get married, have kids. That's one of the big ones, probably.
Well, I like to play Cupid. And we've been talking about perhaps you joining me on my crusade of one of the next projects I'm about to do, and haven't announced it yet, but definitely will be helping people find their loves. So, but yeah, I mean, I gave you my book, #InstaLovers, all about all the online dating world.
Online dating's the worst. No.
Yes, but there's a chapter in there called How to Weed Out the Weirdos. It's my favorite chapter. Get right to the good ones and weed out the weirdos. It's been so fun talking to you about, mindset and courage and career change and all these beautiful things, and obviously clothing, because we love dressing up. And I love those pants too, by the way.
They're so comfortable. I wear them every day.
Yeah,
I wasn't a sweatpants person.
Well, I didn't even think they were sweatpants. So this was the whole thing until you pointed it out. I was like, oh, they're actually sweatpants, but they're dress pants too. So this is Poolhouse New York, you guys.
It is, I'm telling you.
All right, thank you so much for being on Well To Do. We've loved having you, Andrew. Oh my gosh, it rhymes.
Thank you for having me. I had a great time.